guys for coming today. I work with a lot of great people, and I have a colleague that I often do a similar presentation with, named Dr. Renee Jameson, who has worked with me a lot in my time here at KU Medical Center. And I just wanted to give her a little bit of credit because we've really collaborated on these slides and this content over the years, and she's just wonderful to work with. So wanted to put that out there. I have some different learning objectives or targets for you guys today. We're going to talk through the ABCs of behavior. So I'm going to hopefully give you some information about ways to help when kids are having some tricky behaviors. We're going to start with some behavioral theory. And then we're also going to get into ways to support behavior change. We'll talk through a case presentation and we'll discuss some resources or next steps for you. And then we should have some Q&A time. I'll try and keep in mind that I have a group here that is mixing in some families and foster families, and also some families that are like working with families of kids who might be in foster care or children who might have developmental differences too. So I'm going to try and present some different information today that can be helpful for lots of different people who are attending today. All right, we've got even more people joining. Welcome, welcome. Okay, so my colleagues and I get this question or variations of it all the time when we do these types of presentations. What should I do when Johnny hits? And if we knew the answer immediately for every Johnny out there, then that would be amazing and that would make life so much easier. But unfortunately, I don't have like the magic answer. And if there were like a magic answer or like one thing to do that worked every time with every kid for each specific behavior that people might be concerned about, then caring for kids would be considered a total breeze, right? But it isn't always that clear. I think a lot of you know that. Oh, Elizabeth, I see that you are unmuted. If you want to go ahead and mute, unless you had a question. Okay. Thank you. All right, so what should I do when Johnny hits? So instead of having a magic answer, I start to get really, really curious. So when Johnny hits, we have to ask ourselves a bunch of questions to help us better understand what is at the root of that behavior. Why is he hitting? When is he most likely and least likely to hit? Who does he hit? What is he doing when he hits? Where is he? Just as examples. So when faced with difficult behaviors, we want families and people who are working with families who have kids to consider the function of that behavior. And when we talk about the function of the behavior, we're trying to get at why that behavior is happening. So to try to understand the function of the behavior, it really helps to learn its ABCs. And when we're talking about behavioral theory, the ABC stands for antecedent behavior consequence. Okay, so the antecedent can be thought of like almost like the trigger or the thing that kind of kicks off the behavior. Sometimes it's super obvious what caused Johnny to hit. Maybe the other kid took his toy away right before it happened. Sometimes it's less obvious. Maybe the adults in the room looked away or started kind of chatting with each other. Thinking about everything that was happening right before the behavior happened will help you kind of hone in on what is the antecedent or trigger for that behavior. The behavior is usually the easiest piece of this puzzle. It's what really sticks out to most people when they're observing a kid. So when you think about the behavior and you're trying to describe it to others, it can really help to pretend that you have almost like a video camera that you're looking through and you're trying to describe to someone else like what you're seeing and what you're hearing. Knowing exactly what that behavior is can really help everyone who might work with a kid to be on the same page about what we're doing to help change that behavior, or like within a family, what different caregivers might do to help with that. So one example is aggression. So we think about aggression as a behavior, and a lot of us think we know kind of what that means and what that might look like. But really, I think different people are going to have different definitions of that. So is aggression just hitting, or does it also include screaming? For some families, would it include like rough play with toys? Or like property destruction. So different people might have different views of what that is. So it can really help to kind of know exactly what we're looking at and what we're defining as the behavior that we want to work on. All right, the C is the consequence, and that is what follows the behavior. So you're going to hear consequence, and a lot of you, or some of you, might immediately think, oh, that's the punishment, like taking away Sally's dessert or something like that. And that's not really what we mean when we're talking about a consequence in this sort of behavioral ABC sequence. We just mean what happens right after the behavior. So doing a behavior like hitting might get a child access to a toy, or it might make all the adults quickly come over and start to talk to them, or it might make the child who got hit turn red and start to talk to or interact with the child who hit them. And understanding the consequence or what happens right after the behavior really can help us kind of point the way toward or understand how that behavior is functioning or working. So, what are some kind of functions of behavior? What are some things that might be kind of keeping a particular behavior going? Well, does it get the child interaction or attention? That can be interesting and stimulating to a child, even if the attention is sort of like what we would consider negative, like a reprimand, for example. Does it help them escape or delay something that they don't like? Maybe like homework or having to clean up or something like that. Does it get them access to something that they want, like a toy or a sensation that they like? You can see how understanding more about the consequence and the overall function of that behavior can really help you understand why it's happening and sort of point the way toward what we might want to do about that or what we might want to change so that we see differences in the future. Right. I think it's Adriana. I saw you came off mute. Did you have a question right there? People can pop things in the chat too, and we will have Q&A time, but you're welcome to ask a question.
Do you know the password on my account?
Okay. All right. Okay, so let's break it down. Let's do a little video example of a behavior in progress. You guys see my video?
Yes.
Thank you so much.
Lola, no more Dora, honey. I'm sorry. It's time for bed. It's 7:30. No, we have to turn Dora off at 4. Yeah, no Dora. Is that a little dramatical? What is it you want, Lola? Tell Mommy what you want. Dora? I'm sorry, baby, but Dora is over. No more, yeah, no more Dora.
Oh, poor lady. All right. So when we're thinking about this example that we just watched together, let's try and think about some antecedents. Anybody have ideas about what seemed to be the antecedent or the thing that happened right before we saw that behavior happen? What kind of kicked it off for Lola? You can put it in the chat. You can shout it out.
Removal of a preferred item.
Yeah. So it seems like Dora got turned off, right? And I think another thing that happened was mom said, it's bedtime. Um, what do we think the behavior was if we were trying to like describe that to somebody else? Somebody who didn't see this video. Overtired. Oh yeah, a meltdown. Uh-huh. Yep. Yeah. Yeah, so I think we could describe it like if we were going to do our little video camera test, we would say, "Ooh, we saw some yelling and we saw some crying. I thought she was going to throw that remote, and it looked like maybe she was going to kind of bang her head on the floor a little bit at the end there. She was feeling pretty upset about that." And then consequence. What do you think are some consequences, some things that happened right after this behavior? So like what did we even see like on the video that was happening? I thought, oh, non-action by mom. She didn't give in and turn the TV back on. That's true. She did not do that while we were watching the video. Maybe she did after the video stopped. We don't know. But what did she do? Well, bedtime did get delayed because mom said it's bedtime. And then instead of moving on to bedtime, then, you know, Lola's there and mom's filming her. Mom's talking to her about this. We don't know. Mom might turn back on Dora to stop crying. But she is definitely avoiding that bedtime, it sounds like, with this too. I think this is a really fun example in some ways because we can kind of think about how there are sort of multiple functions potentially for this behavior. And that's how things are sometimes. Sometimes it's multiple things that are maintaining a behavior. But as you can see, when we think about the antecedent, the behavior, and the consequence, it might be potentially really helpful if we were trying to think about a plan to change this behavior in the future. Okay, so let's talk about that. Let's talk about some potential plans to support behavior change now that we've talked about those ABCs. And, whenever we're thinking about behavior change for kids, we want to try and be planned and purposeful as much as possible. Thinking about what are the target behaviors that I want to prevent or decrease? What replacement behaviors do I want to increase? And how am I going to do this? What's my plan? What am I going to do? Or like, what are other caregivers going to do? Or what's the family that I'm working with going to do to work on this problem? I want to focus on preventative strategies today because they help things go more smoothly. And sometimes when you use preventative strategies really well, you can actually avoid even triggering a behavior, the concerning behavior that you're trying to work on. So that's always a plus. That's always nice. One of the first things that we want to do when we think about this is think about some replacement behaviors or skills that we want the child to demonstrate that actually might end up decreasing problem behaviors. And when we identify those, we can teach the new behavior. So one idea that we often think about is, what is the positive opposite of the concerning behavior? That really fits really well a lot of the time. So if you're thinking about like yelling, the positive opposite of that might be talking quietly or using an inside voice. Another idea that helps people sometimes is thinking about what would be an incompatible behavior with the target behavior. So like if a child is holding your hand while you're walking, that would be incompatible or impossible to do at the same time as like running away or climbing. Um, so thinking about incompatible behaviors or positive opposites. Okay, so let's chat a little bit. You can put things in the chat if you want to, or you can talk about it. What would be a good replacement behavior to teach and praise for a child that is grabbing toys from others? You can select all that apply. So a good replacement behavior to teach and praise. So asking for a turn, cleaning up quickly, playing gently with toys, or playing with a different toy. And the problem is that they're grabbing toys from other kids. I like that, Michelle. Yep, D, I think would be great. Teaching them to play with a different toy or choose a different toy. Asking for a turn. Yeah, Christina, that's exactly what I was thinking. A and D, I think would be my top two answers if we were thinking about a good replacement behavior for this. Okay, they still get to play with the toy. Sydney, did you have a question?
Oh, I was just gonna explain how I would apply that.
Yeah.
I worked in childcare for 10 years and I had this go on quite a bit, and especially with toddlers,
Mhm.
preschoolers. And one of the things that I would say is if you want a toy and your friend is playing with it, then you can ask for a turn. If they say no, that's okay because it's still their toy. And you can go back and play with something else for now. And whenever they're done, they can come up to you and say, "Hey, I'm done." Sometimes
Mhm.
that happens, sometimes it didn't. You just kind of had to, support them and say, "Hey, buddy, you've been playing with this for 5 minutes," being passive aggressive a little bit.
Yeah, yeah.
But, then just kind of lead them into saying, "Hey, buddy, I think your turn is done. Why don't we try to, swap out your toys and maybe you'll have fun with something else."
Yeah, and it's a skill that both of the kids are working on, maybe, right? Like asking for a turn and also, giving someone a turn. I love that example. Thank you so much, Sydney. And we'll talk too later about, I think, a strategy that goes well with that, which might be using like a visual timer or something like that too. So we'll talk about that in a little bit as well. Okay, so a second kind of let's chat opportunity, a good positive opposite for tantrums at transition times might be playing gently, moving on to the next thing right away, or being nice. So it's a transition time. That means we're switching from one thing to another. And we're seeing a tantrum at that time. What is the positive opposite? What would we really like to see in that moment? In the chat, I see Michelle put in B. I agree. Yes. So moving on to the next thing right away, I think would be a great positive opposite in that situation. Okay. So when we identify the replacement behavior that we want, sometimes we find that the child needs to be taught that new skill. So how do we teach it? How do we teach a replacement behavior or an incompatible behavior? Some things really lend themselves to games. So the taking turns game, the sharing game, the walking game, the asking first game, and you can actually start playing those games with an adult, with the child, or using like a stuffed animal or a favorite toy that they really like. And then you can gradually include one or more other children in that, if applicable, if that behavior makes sense for doing it with multiple kids, and keeping it short and keeping it fun. Another really great strategy that a lot of teachers use, and I hear some parents use too, is something called pre-correcting. So that's where we remind kids of the behavior that we're wanting to see from them for that time of day before things go south. So that might sound like, hey, we're about to walk into a store. Remember, hands to yourself and walking feet. And then when you start seeing those behaviors from the child, making sure that we're praising them for that and giving them lots of positive attention for that. Another way that we can help teach these skills or replacement behaviors would be through modeling. And that would just be showing the child a simple way of saying it or doing it. I think Sydney's example included like she as the teacher is like giving the child the words to say in that situation. So that's an example of like modeling it for them. Modeling it step by step out loud with simple language and then a short justification for why we're doing that can be a really helpful teaching strategy. And then another strategy that sometimes we use with some of our kids is video self-modeling. So that's actually creating a video of the child doing the desired behavior, which can actually kind of fun and kind of engaging for the child, and then playing it for them to remind them what to do. So it might be something that you would play like right before you're expecting that the child will need the behavior, just to remind them, hey, this is what it looks like when you do that. And there you are, you're doing it. Oh, you're doing such a good job on the video doing that. Now, I've already kind of mentioned label praise or praising kids for their positive behaviors. So once we identify the replacement behavior that we want to teach and that we want to see, we really want to increase or reinforce that replacement behavior as we're teaching it and practicing it. And a labeled praise is a strategic way to reinforce or increase a replacement behavior. You might have also heard this called specific praise. So rather than just kind of unlabeled or plain old praise, good job or thumbs up or awesome or things like that, we want to make sure that we include in that praise what exactly we're praising that child for. So awesome what? Good job for what? Great job using your walking feet, nice quiet voice, good gentle hands, so that the child knows exactly what it was that we're praising. And that's going to be more effective at increasing that specific behavior in the future than if we just say good job. Okay, so let's try it. Your first handout from today, which should be sent to you guys after the webinar, is something that'll look a lot like this. So it has a problem behavior column, opposite behavior or positive opposite, and then a labeled praise column too. So in this example that we've got here, we've got throwing toys as the problem behavior, concerning behavior. And then a positive opposite behavior might be something like keeping toys on the floor or gentle play with the toys. And then the labeled praise that you could make for that might sound something like good rolling the car on the floor, or nice job building gently, or I love how gentle you are with our toys, something like that. And this can be tailored to different families and, different ideas about what sorts of praise and what sorts of behaviors they really think are important to be focusing on. Another helpful preventative or teaching strategy is to give really clear and direct instructions so kids know just what to do. And this is your second handout for today. It has these suggestions that are on the slide, plus a few more. So, feel free to share those with families that you work with, or if you're a family member of a child that you're kind of thinking about right now and you're going to try and use these, feel free to share them with other care providers in your family. So we know that just giving kids directions in certain ways can increase compliance and actually prevent some problem behaviors, especially if you're giving a direction for like a positive opposite behavior or an incompatible behavior. So the first kind of idea that I'm presenting here is to give commands only when you need to. I really want you to sort of choose your battles and kind of save up your energy. So when you give a command, we want it to be one that you are going to take the time to follow through on, something that matters to you. And if it's not worth it, then you don't have to give it as a command. Some other options when you don't want to give a command, but something needs to happen, could be like giving choices. So let's say we're walking out the door and we need to get shoes on. Oh, it's time to get shoes on. You want to wear these shoes or these shoes? Or simply helping the child to, do the task. So, oh, it's time to get shoes on. I'm helping you put on your shoes, instead of saying put on your shoes and choosing that as like a time in the day where we're going to follow through on that command. Now, if putting on shoes is important and you want to spend time working on it, that's awesome. There are times where that's going to be important and you're going to feel like you have the bandwidth to do that. But if it's not, then you can give choices to make it feel a little bit easier, or simply help the child do it. The second one is to tell kids what to do, not what not to do. So this actually is kind of harder than it sounds. So our first instinct when we see someone like climbing, for example, climbing on the back of the couch, it might be to say something like stop climbing or don't climb or quit climbing. But what would be more effective is to tell the child what to do in that situation. What is the behavior I'm looking for? Feet on the floor, or please sit down. It lets kids know exactly what that behavior is that you're looking for and that they need to start doing right in that moment. So it kind of gives their brain a little shortcut and lets them process less language and do less kind of like higher order thinking to figure out what they should be doing by just giving them kind of the big clue of like, here's what I want to see from you right now. The third one on there is to try and be within about 3 feet of the child. We know that commands are going to be more effective when we're this close to someone, gently patting their shoulder, maybe if that's accepted to them, versus, across the house or something like that. So one thing you can do is just come a little bit closer and, then give the command. And like I said, you can pat their shoulder if they like that kind of thing, but if they don't, you don't have to. The next one is to try and be brief and simple. Trying to use one-step commands can be really important for kiddos that might have a language delay or developmental differences. That can really help kids focus and is especially helpful for children, that maybe can't keep all the different steps of something in their mind all at once. And that's okay. They're working on it. The last one on here is to try and use gestures or demonstrations. Things like pointing to what you want to have happen, or even demonstrating the actual behavior. So like, oh, put the ball in the bin and picking up the ball and putting it in the bin and then putting it back so that they can practice doing that if that's something that you're wanting to work on with them. Again, that kind of visual cue is wonderful for a lot of autistic individuals or kids who have language delays or really young kids too. So all of these things can be helpful depending on the individual. Also, after they comply, I want to put in a plug for doing a labeled praise for good listening or good following the directions or nice job putting it in the bin, so that you'll see more of that behavior in the future. Okay, creating good commands is your third handout. I have some kind of less effective commands on the left-hand side, and then some places where we can do more effective commands on the right-hand side. So changing something like don't walk into please, or sorry, don't run into please walk. Stop taking toys into, share this with your brother or whoever. Stop jumping can turn into please sit down. Don't draw on the table can change into draw on the paper or crayons on the paper. So there's some additional examples there that you guys can go through on your own and more on your sheet too. I think that if you fill in the blank on some of those and share those with other caregivers in your home, sometimes that can be a good way to open conversations about giving more effective commands too. Let's chat a little bit about it. This is an example of an effective direct command you could give when Jane is climbing on the back of the couch. A, you're going to fall. B, please sit down. C, don't climb up there. So what do we think? Another one that we might hear might be something just like, Jane. B, or all three. Yep. And it's hard. I said this one is hard for a lot of people because our first instinct is to say no or stop. But if we kind of give Jane the shortcut of telling her exactly what we want to see in that moment, sometimes it can help us see that a bit faster. So please sit down. I love it, Michelle. All right. Okay. So if the trigger for a less desirable behavior seems to be a sudden prompt to change what they're doing, another great preventative strategy is to use what we call transition warnings. So a transition warning can be just a verbal or like an auditory cue, maybe just saying, oh, we've got 10 minutes left and then this is happening. Oh, now we have 2 minutes left. Oh, now we have just less than 1 minute. We're about to switch. And you would say what's coming next. So we have, 2 minutes left of playtime, and then we're going to go sit at the table and eat, for example. And then you can play a certain sound or a song when it's time to go ahead and make that transition. Another option here would be to do a visual timer. So that can look like an iPhone timer countdown, the iPhone has a kind of fun looking timer where you can do a little countdown, and it will actually show that like the amount of time is going away because the color is going away, and you can see that time elapsing. So that kind of visual is really helpful for a lot of kids. And also kind of makes it the phone or the timer's fault that the time is up rather than the adult's fault. So that kind of feels nice sometimes. Some other options for that, there are apps, there are other timer apps that you can look into. Some of them have a cute little like bird hatching out, or like the kid gets to pick the animal that hatches out of the egg when the timer's up. Or like an hourglass from a board game can be another way that some people do it. And then they see, oh, the sand is going away, the time is going away. Oh, the time's almost up, sand is gone, time's up. Or there are these things that you can buy online called the time timer. So you can set it and you can see that the red goes away as the time goes away. And then you can decide if you want it to like have a buzz or like a short alarm, like a quiet alarm, or like a louder one. So depending on what you want to have happen and what your little person or person is okay with. So transition warnings, they really help kids get ready for whatever's next. Lots of kids will benefit from this. Lots of adults actually benefit from having a transition warning. I know a lot of people that it feels hard when somebody yanks us out of a task that we're doing, especially if it's something that we're enjoying. And often it just feels better to know what's coming, especially for anxious kids or kids who might have autism spectrum disorder. And that lead time can be really important. And so I did want to mention sometimes it's helpful for some little ones or some kids with developmental differences to have like a transition job that can help people make that transition even easier. Oh, it's time to eat lunch now. I'll need help to get things to the table. You can take your spoon, and then they have a physical object to kind of take to the next thing and put in its place over there at the new area where we're going to do the new thing. So just some transition warnings. Visual schedules and visual supports can also be a great way to prompt for the desired behaviors and provide more warning for transitions when something about transitioning seems to be a trigger for a child. What they do is they kind of reduce the executive functioning load. So visual schedules and supports kind of break complex things into smaller, more doable steps. It allows the child to kind of focus their attention on learning and perfecting that routine rather than trying to remember it or keep it all in their head what they need to do next. And the best part is that the visual can also include reinforcers to help increase motivation. So maybe it's like we're going to do this, this, and this, and then we get this break, or we get this cool thing, or we get this sticker or something like that. So with these, we're just trying to have structure, predictability. We're going to help teach new skills and routines. And it can look a lot of different ways. A lot of you have probably seen a lot of these, and you can tailor them to different kids and different reading levels too. A lot of adults will use a visual support that's just a to-do list. That's a visual support. But these can be for kids, they can be pictures, they can be clip art, they can be actual pictures of the actual child doing the thing that is next on the list. They can be paired with words, or for older kids who are like too cool for school, maybe it's just a to-do list that maybe has something on there that is visually appealing to them. You can make these in all sorts of ways where they can have Velcro on them, or they can be crossed off, or we just, post it and look at it. And there's a website on here too that use visual strategies that helps a lot of people too. Here are some examples for you guys. So we've got a hand washing one, a potty one, and this one's more for like a school or like a daycare setting, or maybe like a library book story time. But you can use visual schedules like these to teach the new behavior or important behaviors, or to just keep people on track during a routine. A visual schedule can be paired with transition warnings like we talked about. So maybe a teacher or a care provider might show the visual schedule and say, oh, now we're saying hello, and in a couple minutes we'll read a book. Okay, now it's time to read a book. Oh, and now we're going to move over this one. Or maybe we just use pointing if it's not a Velcro. It doesn't have to be fancy Velcro. It can be really exciting too for the kids to help pick the pictures, or, if they're artists, they can even help, draw things or color things into, and that can be extra motivating for them. First then prompting is kind of exactly what it sounds like. And it's a way to prompt the behavior that you want to see. First we're going to do webinar and then you're going to have snack time, maybe, hopefully. So the prompt is simple and it can be verbal or visual. And this is great for toddlers or older kids too. First we're doing this, next we're doing this. Christina, where can we find these types of charts? Teachers Pay Teachers is a website where you can find a lot of these. If you guys would like, I can kind of compile a couple different resources for you and have those sent out to you. A lot of families that I work with, we actually just pull up a Word document in clinic and we make a list of like what the routine is with the different steps. Awesome, Michelle. We'll do that. Oh, potty training. Okay, yeah, I actually have some that I could just send you. So like potty training is a really common one. We break down the different steps. If you just Google like visual schedule potty training, a lot of them will pop up too. But if you want to tailor it, you can actually just pull up a Word document or like a PowerPoint if you have access to that type of software. And then you can kind of paste in, you can make the sequence with like words if you want to, and then you can paste in the pictures that you want to use too. Yeah. Okay. Oh, like what to do in the bath, Michelle? You need bathing reminders. Like first get everything wet. Next, yeah, okay, sure. Yeah, and one trick is if you're going to use these in the bathtub or any place where you think they're going to get wet is to get like a plastic sleeve, like kind of protector, where you can kind of slide the paper in and then you can even like duct tape the top so that the water won't get in, and then it can literally be in the shower if you need it to be. Yeah, of course. With the visual schedules, what you find, I can kind of go back to that slide actually. What you'll find is that like initially you're going to really have to talk through like each step each time and do kind of more verbal and moving through. But as they understand the routine more and more and they start to remember it more and more, you're going to be able to fade yourself out and do less and less prompting. So maybe eventually you're just like kind of tapping it to remind them, ooh, look and see what's next on your list. And you can even say, oh, what's next? And then eventually you're gonna notice, oh, they glanced over at the list to see what to start to do next. And that's a really exciting moment too. Oh. Okay, reactive strategies. I just covered a bunch of different things that people can do proactively to try and strengthen and teach the behaviors that they want to see. But I also want to address some strategies that we commonly recommend when a challenging behavior is actually happening in the moment. And again, we want to try and consider the function when we're thinking about these. Okay, so if we figure out that part of what is keeping a behavior going is that it's gaining attention, whether it's positive attention or negative attention from us, then you might consider something like planned ignoring or underreacting to it, because it'll give much less attention. Clearly, if something dangerous is going on in the moment, you cannot fully ignore that, and I would not advise you to do that. But if it's like an annoying kind of behavior, or things like whining, that might be a good example of like this is being done for attention for some kids. And what that would look like if we were going to plan to ignore it is we would not talk about the behavior. We would try our very best not to look at the child, and we do our very best to try and keep a neutral facial expression, which is one of the hardest things, especially when you're feeling tired and you've heard a lot of it, or seen a lot of it. So, like I said, good for attention-based behaviors, and you've just got to think ahead about like what can I do planned ignoring for if it's attention maintained. So like if attention seems to be feeding this behavior. An example that I often talk through with parents is like if a child is hitting or biting or kicking a friend, sometimes that is partly attention maintained. So like partly due to the attention that they're receiving after that. Sometimes that behavior is due to like, ooh, I'm doing this behavior. I'm doing the kicking or biting or hitting in order to get something. And so we want to kind of think in those terms, like, what is this? What's happening with this behavior? And we can do that by observing. But if you think that it's partly at least attention maintained, then you can try out the strategy of like, oh, a hit happened. Oh, instead of going right to the kiddo that did the hitting, I'm actually going to go over to the kid who got hit. I'm going to model an empathetic response. Oh gosh, I'm so sorry that happened. You did not deserve that. That's not okay. Maybe you could even scoop up that child and give them a lot of attention while you're kind of moving away from the child who did the hitting or kicking. And then it shows, this person's going to get my attention and that behavior is not going to get my attention. Of course, in the meantime, we want to make sure that that person is not getting the thing that they want. Bailey, did you have something?
No, sorry, I didn't mean, no, sorry.
Oh, okay, you're fine. You're fine. Oh, it's all good. All right. Another common example is to limit responses to whining or repetitive questioning, which is something that sometimes we see in autistic individuals, where like we might answer the question the first time, and then after that we say, oh, oops, I already answered that one. So I'll be ready when you want to talk about something else. And then we can put that on ignore and not give that our attention or our feedback. I do want to mention, though, that when we have a plan to ignore a less desired behavior, we always want to make sure that we're giving lots of attention at other times for the desired behavior or skill. And often we do that with labeled praise or coming up to the child, noticing, when they are doing the behavior that we want. It makes it super clear that which behaviors are going to get our attention and which are not. And so it never feels good. It wouldn't feel good for anybody to be ignored all the time, of course. And I don't think any of you would do that. But being really purposeful when you decide, oh, I'm going to use the ignoring strategy to really think about what's the positive opposite and how can I make sure that I'm giving regular attention to it whenever I can catch it. Okay. Oh, thanks for answering that, Katie. Awesome. Yep, you guys should be able to get the slides from this. And I can send out additional resources too about visual supports, okay? Renee, did you have something?
No, I was just turning
Okay.
on my camera. I didn't have
Oh,
anything.
hello. It's nice to see you. Sorry.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. So let's say that you figure out that that part of the function of the behavior is to get access to something that the child wants or likes. And in this case, we would want to ensure that the undesired behavior doesn't result in the child getting that thing, right? So, if they hit to get a toy, we wouldn't want to just let them play with the toy happily after they've done the hitting, right? We would want to make sure that that toy is not something that they get access to by hitting, because if they do maintain access to it after hitting, then we're probably going to see more hitting in the future because it worked. And in that case, we would need to really work hard on teaching and reinforcing alternative behaviors, right? So like asking for a turn or waiting patiently or playing with a different toy or offering a toy trade. But when that hitting behavior happens, we want to make sure it doesn't work for the kid. Okay, let's chat a little bit. Effective ignoring of a minor attention-getting behavior looks like doing which of the following during the duration of the behavior? Keeping a neutral facial expression, not talking to the child, not looking directly at the child, or all of the above. Yep, way to go, guys. Go, Michelle. Go, Christina. Awesome. Okay, so takeaway points from this part. Important to create structure and preventative plans, using planned ignoring or using planned and purposeful reinforcement, I'm sorry, and then to try and respond to behaviors when they do happen using consistency and to try really hard to consider the function. I do have a little case presentation that I'll pop through with you guys. Bob is 11 years old and he has autism spectrum disorder and ADHD combined subtype. And he has a little compliance difficulty. So he complies with directions the first time they're given about 10 to 25% of the time. This looks like, when we see it, ignoring or continuing the current behavior or continuing the current activity, or maybe protesting or arguing. The most difficult directions for Bob are things related to bedtime, getting dressed, cleaning up, and getting off of electronics. The behavior is most likely when he's asked to get off of electronics, and least likely when he's given directions to get ready for like a preferred activity. The reason why I started with the behavior here instead of the antecedent is because usually when people come to me, I get the description of the behavior first. So I'm trying to kind of work it that way. So we know what the behavior is. We know some information about it. What are some things that it sounds like are happening right before that behavior happens? So it's non-compliance with directions. So it seems like the antecedent for that is being given directions or commands. Sometimes those commands are given by parents, sometimes they're given by teachers, sometimes they're stop doing X commands, sometimes they're start doing Y commands. And so those are the things that are happening right before. What are the consequences? Well, depending on what the direction is, he might put off bedtime, he might be delaying getting dressed, he might be delaying cleaning up or escaping that altogether if he does it for long enough. He also might be retaining access to the electronics longer. So he's getting to play longer. And there also might be some attention that he's gaining if parents are repeating the directions a lot, or they're getting into kind of a debate with him, or different things like that. Okay, so proactive ideas, thinking about some of the strategies that we talked through today. Anybody have anything that they feel like, gosh, what could we use that would maybe help with some of this? If we wanted to be real scientists about it, we would change one thing at a time and carefully monitor their behavior to see if it happened any less frequently. But a lot of the time we have to kind of figure out what's a reasonable kind of first thing or first couple things that we want to do to help support behavior change, and then kind of check in periodically to figure out if we need to tweak the plan or add another support. And so some different proactive ideas that I might come up with in this situation might be about strengthening or increasing smooth transition behavior, transitioning off of devices, for example, or strengthening direction following behavior. And so we talked through several different strategies today that might help address some of that. So if we're going to really hone in on the transition, we could start using transition warnings to make that a little bit easier. We could use a visual schedule or another visual. We could use labeled praise for any smooth transitions off of devices. Sometimes we'll use like an extra token, extra time token for an easy transition. So, if you get off the first time I tell you to, off of the electronics the first time I tell you to, then you get this cool Pokemon token that you get to give back to me that will, earn you an extra 5 minutes next time you're on your electronics. Strengthening direction following behavior. We talked through several ways to give really good effective directions. Talked about using labeled praise. We could also pair that with incentives. And we could also try rearranging the schedule to stack preferred activities after non-preferred. So let's say getting homework done is really hard. Maybe we put doing homework first, and then we put like something we're really looking forward to after that. So sometimes you hear that called like grandma's rule. So, you can have your cookie when you finish your homework, or you can watch TV when you finish your homework. Not all of my ideas probably feel doable or fit well with every family, and that's okay. We have to figure out what fits, and that's why we kind of go through sort of a brainstorming process and see, what makes sense in the context of this, family and this behavior and this kid. Reactive ideas. Giving minimal attention when he's doing non-compliant behavior, not following directions, and then a consistent warning to make it super boring for him to do that. So if you don't do X, then I'm going to remove Y privilege, whatever it is. We could also try preventing access to the preferred activity. So like we'd even turn off the Wi-Fi. And with a younger child, you can do hand-over-hand prompting to prevent escape from a less preferred activity. Oh, I'm going to help you get your shoes on if that's something that you guys are working on together. Okay. I do have quite a few resources for you guys that I wanted to go through, but they are all in handout number 4. So I just wanted to highlight that. It's a lot of websites. The first 2 are really more about behaviors, and Behavior Checker is great because it's searchable by behavior and it provides some function-informed interventions. So if there are particular problems you're running into, that might be a great place to sort of start. The last one on there, the CDC Learn the Signs, Act Early campaign, is a great one for making sure that you're having developmentally appropriate expectations of a child. What sorts of directions should they be able to follow, and what should I be expecting of this kiddo? Or what should the family I'm working with be expecting of the kid? Training opportunities. You guys are already familiar with the Kansas Family Support Center because that's why you're here. Thank you for coming. There are even more training opportunities on the website and lots of different offerings for caregivers and professionals and organizations. Wanted to put in a plug for the Children's Mercy Care workshops. These are free and they're for anybody who's looking to improve a relationship with a child and reduce mild to moderate behavior challenges. They're also done virtually, which is really attractive for a lot of people. Oopsie. Okay, some additional resources. I wanted to give a couple of different things for you guys. Oh yeah, guided access is a great one. Yes, thank you, Elizabeth. And then the timer feature does shut it down. So that is wonderful. That's another way that you could remove access without having to turn off everybody's Wi-Fi. Excellent thought. Additional resources I want you guys to be aware of. Sometimes kids who are having language delays or developmental differences might also have some behavioral difficulties that are going along with that, maybe because they're having a hard time communicating. Infant toddler services are available across the state for kids who are 0 to 3 and qualify for those. Those are free services. There's also early childhood special education for kids who are 3 years old up until they are going to kindergarten, and that would just be through your local school district. They do child find events or screenings to help identify kids that might benefit from some of those services. And then, of course, at school age, families can certainly ask about an evaluation for an IEP if that seems appropriate and the behavior is going on at school too. And many of you probably already know about ways to get families and children involved with local community mental health centers, which can provide a lot of support. That's just a whole network of centers across Kansas, and the link in your handout is going to let you it's going to lead you to a directory so you can find the one that's closest to you. And then also another plug for the Kansas Family Support Center. There are some additional supports on there related to behavioral health and autism related services in Kansas. Oh.